How's everyone this morning? Feel free to have a seat and we'll get started. Thanks for being here. It's always exciting to be back in person, and thank you for your time and your interest in putting Tennesseans to work. We're going to get started right away, and I'm happy to have a guest visit us and speak to us, so please welcome Governor Bill Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to stop in for just a minute and welcome you and thank you. As I look around this room, I see a lot of people that I know that that have engaged in enhancing the ability for Tennesseans to find opportunity all across our state. First of all, Jeff McCord, I'm so grateful that he made the decision to join our team and to serve in the role that he's serving. He's doing an incredible job, but all that we do at the state, it's only possible when we actually engage the citizenry in the efforts. We can only create an environment. Government can't solve the greatest problems we have. The people can do that only, and they do that by engaging in the work, for example, that you are doing. So thank you very much for serving. One of the most important things we can do in this state is provide opportunity and provide security and provide freedom. But opportunity comes in the work that you do, and that is to make certain that people are skilled and ready, and that we have an environment that creates jobs across Tennessee for every sector of our citizenry. So thanks for what you do. Good news is we just got our unemployment numbers. They have gone down by 0.2 of a point. We're at 4.7% in the state. That was a drop. 94 out of 95 counties had a reduction in unemployment numbers. That's really good news, and it's a testament to the work that you're doing. Y'all know my background and my history of working with skilled tradespeople, and a history and an understanding that I have of the need to develop workforce so that they have that opportunity. And now that I'm in this position that I am of recruiting companies to Tennessee, I've seen even more how important it is that we develop workforce, because the number one question they ask me when they sit down at the table, if I'm meeting across from a company, across the table from a CEO in California or in Korea, the number one question they ask me is, how are you going to help me develop the workforce that we need if we make the decision to move our company to your state? And we've been very successful because of the work that you're doing. You know, we started with the GIVE Act, and we've doubled down and tripled down on that. $25 million more dollars in GIVE Act grants. We've put $100 million in this year's budget for the removal of the wait list at colleges of applied technology. Our apprenticeship program that you all know so much about is expanding the numbers of apprentice students and apprenticeships that we have all across the state. We are rapidly expanding our STEM education through the Workforce Initiatives program. You all know all this because you're doing it. You're creating the strategy for us as a state. We have one of the fastest growing economies, and there are more people moving here than most any state in the country, and there are a lineup of companies that are considering moving into our state, and that's because of the work that you're doing. So I'm just here to welcome you and thank you and say keep it up. I'm excited about the future of our state. We face some real challenges right now. We're in one of the worst surges in COVID of any state in the country. The Delta variant moved its way through the South, and it's here, and it's significant, and we're addressing it every single day. Our hospitals are strained. It's the reason I issued an executive order to provide them flexibility and funding. We are working with our health providers every single day to provide treatment for Tennesseans and to do the things that we can to mitigate the spread of the virus, because protecting lives is a part of what we do, and protecting livelihoods is a part of what we do as well, and you're doing that. We've focused on how to create a business-friendly environment, even from the way we spent our CARES money and kept our unemployment trust fund up at $1 billion, so companies didn't have to pay additional premiums for unemployment insurance, all the way down to pushing money out directly to employers that were hurt through the pandemic because of temporary shutdowns. I'm a business guy who believes that one of the most important things we can do is create an environment for businesses to thrive so that jobs can be created, so that lives can be changed. And you're helping us do that. So be encouraged. We have great days ahead for this state. We're in the middle of a real crisis right now. We got some real challenges from one end of the state to the other. Our nation, even in the last couple days, the challenges that we face as a nation are enormous. And but God's a redeemer, and he takes the hardest things in a nation's life or a state's life or a community's life, and he uses them for good. And I believe that is the case. And Tennesseans step up and they persevere and they navigate through the hardest things and work together to accomplish what we need to get done. There's great hope for the future of our state. I'm excited about the days ahead. And economically, we got some really good things coming. We're very hopeful. We're very excited. There were some things around the corner that we believe we will see as we continue the work, and what you're doing is making that possible. So I'm happy to stand before this group. This is a group that I think are making a real difference in the lives of Tennesseans as we go from one step to the other. So thank you for your work. Thanks for not just what you work on this committee, but I know by the faces in this room what you're doing out in the communities. And what happens at the Capitol is fine, but what happens in the communities is where Tennessee's transformed. So keep it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Lee. We'll continue we'll say that was call to order, so we've got that out of the way. But I do want to remind everybody that this is being live streamed on YouTube, so always want to make everyone aware of that. And if you're speaking or asking a question, make sure you're using the microphones and you hit the button so this little light turns green when you speak. We're going to push through our agenda with no additional breaks, and that way you'll be done in time for lunch. That's the goal. I do want to thank everybody who worked toward last week's convening in Nashville, where all of the agencies got together and compared notes and just shared what's working and what's not working, and we're able to hash some things out, and we're able to congratulate successes. And I think, in my mind, just really made some progress on how we can make what's working well work better. So just, I was happy to be a part of that. I appreciate the board members who were able to take time to sit in on that as possible as well, and just thank all of the organizers who made that happen. So thank you for that. Ann, do you have a special guest with you today? And would you be able to introduce your intern for us?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ray, would you mind speaking out, please?
Mm-hmm.
This is Lynn.
Excellent. You're welcome. Thank you. And then, Miss Christine Hopkins, it seems like we're really close to a birthday for you to celebrate, and I think that's tomorrow. So we wish you the best and congratulations on a birthday. I'll let you guys afterward ask her what birthday it is. I won't announce that on YouTube. All right. All right, so Eiler, will you help us with roll call, please?
I will. Good morning. As I call your name, please confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. If you are representing by proxy, please state your name for the record. Martha Axford. Brandy Faust for State Senator Paul Bailey. Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker. Present. Jason Bates. Present. Tim Berry.
Present.
Sarah Noel for State Representative Clark Boyd. Present. Ronnie Brewer. Present. Mayor Kevin Brooks. Present. Jonathan Cantrell. Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell Street for Commissioner Clarence Carter.
Ann Haggard, I'm here as her proxy.
Michelle Falcone. Ben Ferguson. Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Present for Southeast.
Ann Hatcher.
Ronnie Brewer as proxy.
Christine Hopkins.
Present for Southern Middle.
Rick Isaacson. J. Paul Jackson.
Present.
Assistant Commissioner Mandy Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff McCord.
Present.
Vonda McDaniel. Mayor E.L. Morton.
Present.
Policy Director Tony Nicknajad for Governor Bill Lee.
Present.
Greg Persinger.
Present.
Stuart Price.
Present.
Barry Ray.
Present.
Director Ann Thompson for Commissioner Bob Rolfe.
Present.
Chief of Programs Jean Luna for Commissioner Penny Schwinn.
Present.
Kyle Spurgeon.
Present.
Jeff Vance.
Present.
Kevin Vaughn.
Present.
Rusty Vi.
Present.
Ron Wade.
Present. Greater Memphis.
Chairman Barry, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Eiler. I appreciate that. And then we also, hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes in your pre-packet. And we need to see if everybody's okay with approving those from our last meeting. So I would accept a motion if anyone wanted to make one. Have a motion, a second? A second? Any discussion about the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of accepting the minutes from the last meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. All right, Commissioner McCord, I'll let you say a few words.
Sure, thank you, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. Just very, very quickly, in amongst the renewed pandemic and all the calamity that's happening outside of us, we do have tremendous opportunity. We, as a department, it wasn't a listening tour, it was a discussion about what we as a department are doing and as a state, strategy-wise with employers. And our purpose was to ask them, here's what we're doing, and get some feedback. What are we missing? Is there something that we shouldn't be doing that's prioritized that is not? And got a lot of great feedback, had a lot of employers will be very honest with you, which is exactly what we need, a lot of honest conversation about what we need to do, because we are fighting a demographic battle. We're fighting a labor force participation battle. Of course, across the state, and we're fighting a skills gap battle. So we have three fronts. You're not supposed to have three fronts. Just ask the Germans. They can't even do two fronts. But it's not what you want to have, but it also, again, it's exciting. And I won't speak to our convening, but there was a lot of excitement at our convening because we know what we do is really, really going to matter. Not that it hasn't before, but also we have opportunities, again, to connect populations that there was reluctance to in the past, but because of the demand, we have a way to connect to supply that maybe was not there, or the opportunity was not, or the business need was not there as much as it is now. So it's an exciting time for us. We'll work through the chaos. Once again, we have a lot of practice at that, and get to the other side pursuing the purpose that we have to drive individual prosperity, and by doing that, drive community prosperity through employment. And so look forward to continuing the work. You can tell over the last year and a half, I have had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with the governor, and this is not only a practical outlook for him to solve the problem, it's really close to his heart as far as the work that's going on here. So it wasn't, I was asked, could the governor come, and I knew he would want to. It wasn't a hard sell to get him to be here. So anyway, with that, once again, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, now we're going to get an update on unemployment insurance. So Assistant Commissioner Feltz, if you would give us your time.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. This morning I'm going to do something I very rarely do, or haven't done in the last year and a half a lot, is I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I'm going to pay you the biggest compliment that you can be paid, and make you not look or listen to me about my program, like you've heard the last year and a half. I think to Governor Lee's point, after the health field, this is probably, in my opinion, the most important convening in the state because of the issues Commissioner McCord mentioned. We need badly to get our Tennesseans back in the workforce. So I'm just going to give you a quick update, and then I'll open it up for any questions, Chairman Barry, if that's all right. I'll give you one statistic that I think says a lot about the unemployment insurance program over the last 18 months, and that's this. Normally, in an 18-month period, my program would pay out roughly $200 to $300 million in benefits to Tennesseans. In the last 18 months alone, the UI program has paid out in excess of $8 billion to Tennesseans that were eligible for regular state unemployment and the federal programs. I think that says a lot about how much my division has done, how much we've accomplished, the part that you all have played in supporting us, because you've dealt with a lot of our claimants. But having said that, and now that the federal benefits, we have reason to believe are done, and we're trending downward in a lot of ways, now the pressure flows to you guys. But in unemployment insurance, we still have some big tasks ahead of us that we could use your help with. One of those things is, all we've heard for the last 18 months is fraud only means identity theft. That's not the case. It's been a dangerous thing because of the loopholes in the federal programs, but all statistics show that the biggest part of overpayments in unemployment insurance come from unreported separations and wages, and not telling us about that. So we will be extremely busy over the coming months and probably years, running cross matches against our records and employers to find things like missing wages that weren't reported and separations and things like that. We can use your help as you deal with employers to do that very thing. One key thing that you all are playing a very vital role in, we've already seen, is helping employers to report job refusals and failures to return to work. To Commissioner McCord's point, we do have a shortage of labor workforce. And so we're getting a lot of those. I'm happy to say that we're current on investigating those right now. And there's been a lot of benefits that stopped that people should not be collecting because employers need them out there. And Chairman Barry, that's a conversation you and I had almost a year ago. Lastly, and this is one of those things that can change in an instant. The federal programs were over, we're working our way out of the backlog, and now we find ourselves again tasked with one of the most important things my program can do, and that's try to help with the DUA program that was just approved. You know, good Lord knows those Tennesseans had no way to know last Saturday when they woke up that they would be in need of the things that we can provide. I'm happy to say Governor Lee requested and President Biden approved about the fastest DUA declaration that I've ever seen. So we've already got that set up in our system. For all of you in the room that have anything to do with those 4 counties, don't hesitate to reach out to me and my admin assistant, Javaria Bradley. If I can't answer you, she will, and we can direct you to how to get those employers and claimants the fastest help we can. I said all that to say this. Now I'm back to this important group. You all have stood up and helped us and supported us in so many ways in the last year and a half, dealt with our claimants, lifted us up when we needed it. Despite all this work that we still have in front of us, we will play as big a role as you'll let us and as big a role as we can in helping getting Tennesseans back in the workforce. We make you that promise because that's the most important thing. That's it for me, Chairman Barry. I'm going to quit.
That's good stuff. Who has questions for Rusty?
Rusty, what's,
Not you.
tell everybody what DUA stands for.
DUA is Disaster Unemployment Assistance. And it's only used in the case of a natural disaster such as a flood or a tornado, you know, earthquake, things of that nature. But it's the equivalent of the pandemic unemployment, the PUA, in that we pay benefits to people who are not normally eligible for state unemployment. Yes, sir.
Do you have any way to predict, sort of like you talk about the increase over the last 18 months in funds that you've paid out? Do you have any way to predict what that's going to look like over the next 6 months? Or is that number going to come down dramatically back to the historical levels? Or is it going to stay, you know, at these unprecedented levels?
Yes, sir. It's already coming down drastically. When we ended the federal programs, obviously paying the extra $600 and the extra $300 and paying people you don't normally pay. DUA is one thing. Oftentimes we'll see our numbers rise with a disaster, but nothing to the equivalent of the pandemic. But no, sir, I don't have any way to predict that, what we'll pay. I might have been able to, had what happened last Saturday not happened, and now you're going to throw DUA in there. But it is coming down drastically.
So if I may, benefits paid out coming down drastically. People making claims as initial claims are getting close to what they were pre-pandemic. Phone calls, phone volume down drastically. We're not taking 106,000 calls a day anymore. It's down to a couple of thousand, and those sorts of things. So everything is down as good in this, and everything's actually more than trending down, to Rusty's point, dropping off a cliff, going down.
All good signs. Yes, sir. Anyone else? All right. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Chairman Barry.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, next, we have some show and tell. This is a video that's going to be the first in a series that highlights partnerships with the Tennessee Board of Regents and other workforce partners we have. And so let's take a minute and watch this video that's been put together for us.
So this facility is about workforce training.
A place to learn a new collar trade for a new skills economy.
Anything is possible in the state of Tennessee when you have facilities like this that are static around small town rural areas.
Motlow State's Automation and Robotics Training Center sits in McMinnville, Warren County, a city of just about 14,000 residents.
It's a lot easier today for someone to actually be able to gain the skill that they need right where they are, if it's small town rural, and then farm out their ability and skill sets to via contract or working with a major employer that's in a metropolitan area.
Nationally recognized industry trainers for the world's leading robotics manufacturers teach students who currently work in the field or plan to make this a career. It's an education that can happen here in McMinnville or with this type of technology anywhere in the world.
The economy has changed. The skills economy is a real thing, and the value add of people being able to do these things on their own, from their phones, anytime, on-demand learning, it's going to be a way into which we leverage what we already have.
This state-of-the-art facility isn't just an educational jewel in rural Tennessee, it's also an industry recruitment tool.
We're not only seeking to retain what we already have here in the state of Tennessee for business and industry, but we're also looking to recruit and evolve.
And when industry leaders learn what Motlow State has to offer and the workforce the school can train, they can clearly see what's possible in Tennessee.
We have blue-collar work ethic, and now we're picking up the skill sets associated with this new skilled economy. And that's one heck of a combination.
Very good. That's a good program. So you'll continue to see a series of those best practices highlighted as we identify more of those. Okay, I think we're ready to hear some updates from the committee meetings we had prior to today's board meeting. So let's start with the Oversight Committee. And Ronnie, what do you have to share with us?
Good morning again, everyone. In the Oversight Committee meeting this morning, we had a lively and informative presentation by Ben going over KPIs and how those KPIs are addressed. We did have a small amount of concerns, still just wanting to make sure that we are in alignment with all of the goals that the governor has set and make sure that our KPIs are reflective of that. However, I think that it was a very successful conversation and we all walked away with a better understanding. In addition to that, we voted on a policy, the sanctions for failure to meet federal and state standards, we voted to bring that policy to the board today, understanding that it's not a new policy, it just has an expiration date on it and that date has come.
Okay, and so there were no changes to the policy, it's just reinstating something that's been, okay. So we need a motion to continue that policy for how much longer? What will this new term be?
Currently, it's set at 2 years.
Okay.
But there is some discussion about, because we had a discussion about expiration dates and policies. And so we know that there is some discussion about mirroring some other departments within the state where there are not expiration dates, but that's not solidified.
Okay. So for now, it's another 2 years, and then there'll be an opportunity to discuss that moving forward. So, okay. Any questions about the Oversight Committee meeting? All right, I'll take a motion to talk about accepting that policy.
I would like to move that this policy be accepted.
Very good. And a second?
This is Mayor Morton, second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of continuing the policy for its next term? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? That is passed. Ronnie, thank you. I appreciate your time on that. Okay, and then Operations Committee. Stuart, give us the lowdown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Operations Committee today received presentations on 3 work groups, a job seeker work group, business service work group, and apprenticeship work-based learning work group. And we also took a policy under consideration. Ann Havard pulled double duty. She had a work group presentation and a policy presentation. On the job seeker work group, the presentation material you have details their progress on 5 major milestones. But her presentation focused on their focus on childcare and their building partnerships around establishing childcare options for our workforce, recognizing that that is a hurdle that is present in a lot of the efforts that we're all engaged in. And so they are working to, in creative ways to establish child care career pathways, create partnerships for co-locating child care, and working to streamline services across all agencies to present child care across the state, particularly in areas that are very much underserved in that regard. We also received a update from Tyra, who likewise pulled double duty in presenting both the business service work group and apprenticeship work-based learning work group, along with Matthew. But first, the business service work group presentation. They have established an advisory committee, and there are conversations around goals and expectations with each member. Their initial meeting for the advisory committee for this work group is September 3rd. They're currently working to identify challenges, roadblocks, and possible solutions. There are 3 challenges that they've identified. Not enough workers to meet employer demand, a benefits cliff in terms of child care, transportation, food, clothing costs, and then the labor force participation rate. And it's we had a lot of discussion around this with a lot of input from board members, just giving firsthand experience around the challenges and the stresses this is putting on our economy. And so we're very pleased and excited to hear the work they're doing. And then their next steps, by the way, the Employer Advisory Committee and Business Services Work Group will be identifying possible solutions to address these challenges. And then lastly, Tyra and Matthew Spinella presented on the Apprenticeship Work-Based Learning Work Group, and they've had a productive third quarter. During their meeting, the team discussed progress towards their overarching goals of increasing participation rates statewide. Currently, there are 7,143 active apprentices, which is an update to the material that's in our packet. The number's increasing daily. It's at an all-time high, and work-based learning enrollment increased by almost 1,900 students in the 2021 school year, which equates to a 9.7% increase. The team's on track or ahead of schedule with its milestones as well, with 25 new apprenticeship sponsors, 11 Tennessee certified pre-apprenticeships, and approximately 20% growth in the number of apprenticeship completers since January. So very exciting news from that group as well. And of course, the pre-apprenticeship program is very important to the industries in our state. And then finally, and by the way, Ann also gave us a Reader's Digest version of the TANF legislative update, and so we look forward to hearing more detail in the larger board meeting. But we also had a policy vote, the Common Exit Policy. This policy is intended to provide guidance on how and when to exit participants that enrolled in the Adult Dislocated Worker, Youth, Wagner-Pizer, and Trade Adjustment Act programs. A common exit occurs when a participant enrolled in multiple partner programs has not received services from any DOL-administered program in which the participant is enrolled, to which the common exit applies, for at least 90 days, and no future services are planned. It specifically addresses adult dislocated worker and youth activities, Wagner-Pizer employment service programs, Trade Adjustment Act, and Trade Globalization Adjustment Act, and Jobs for Veterans state grants. We had some discussion with this policy around the scope. And in our scope statement, we include a broad list of agencies when, in fact, the policy is addressing 4 specific areas. And it was good discussion. We got some good answers on why we do that. I think fundamentally it boils down to it's better to have too many than to not include one. And so we have generally a standard scope presentation for that portion of the policies. The committee voted to forward the policy to the board for approval as is written.
All right, and hopefully everyone had a chance to review that policy ahead of time. What questions would you have for Stuart or that committee?
So my question is just operational. When you look at the policy, there's like a 30-day call and a 5-day call. Do we actually have systems in place to track that and manage to that in the?
Good question. So I'll defer to, yes.
Hi, Steve Playle, Assistant Commissioner for Division of Workforce Services. Yes, we do have systems in place to do that from our local level at our AJCs, our AJC staff, others who are engaged in those programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, can we have a motion to accept the policy as presented? Okay, a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting the policy as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? That policy is approved. All right, Kevin, tell us what we saw in the Innovation Committee today.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. First of all, we had Mr. Ryan Allen give us a presentation from the WIO work group. We discussed some KPIs from the June to our present. He was letting us know the data that was going on, their goals and objectives, some of the current projects that this WIO work group is working on now is the P20 Connect, the SAS visualization, proactive communications, and the Coleridge initiative. Some of their upcoming projects is going to be done in Broad Street, where they're going to be evaluating some of our software and the apprenticeship data. Next, we heard from Ms. Teresa Smith, was from some of the special projects that they have going on. And she looks at the labor force participation rate. She let us know the ups and downs of that, the positive versus the negative. They're mainly focusing on right now the non-working workforce of where that is, and those people that entail in that group. She gave us the breakdown on that, and then Mr. Rastogi followed up on that presentation and let us know how we could access the dashboard and how that worked, and that we could pick county from county to see how one county versus from another. And then our last presentation was by Ms. Jennifer and Christy. They represented the Northwest area. They let us know about their reentry manufacturing program that they have, and a new registered apprenticeship program that they're dealing with. And then last, they let us know about the Orchard House project and the goals and missions of that. And we don't have any policies to vote on at this time.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Kevin. I had a chance to sit in on that, and a lot of people like to spend time on social media. I can't wait to, if you've not had a look at the statistics on the website, that I could just spend hours just digging into demographic cross-sections and counties and background. Anyway, it's a lot of good data on there, so sorry to get excited about something so.
Glad there's somebody as big as nerd as
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin in the Innovations Committee? All right. Okay, let's get an update from Ann Havard on TANF.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
So I want to introduce this a little bit. This is important. And Ann leaned over to me and said, "This is the third time you've seen this presentation. Actually, it's the fourth time I've seen this presentation. And this is good stuff. It's going to impact the work that we do quite a bit going forward. And it's exciting. It's trying to solve a long-term issue that we all know when we talk about benefits cliff and the whole 9 yards. And Tennessee's going to be at the forefront of doing that. So. Again, not that everything that we do does not have weight and importance, but this is exciting. So anyway, with that, Ann, I'll I'll leave it to you, and I'm actually going to step out for a little while on this fourth one.
You don't want to see it again.
No, it's-
Commissioner, thank you so much, and thank you, Chairman Barry. My name is Ann Havard. I serve as the Senior Policy Advisor at the Tennessee Department of Human Services. I'm really excited to be sharing with you all today some of the details of the implementation of the TANF Opportunity Act, which recently was signed into law this past summer. I'm going to start at the 30,000-foot level and talk a little bit about the flaws of the safety net system itself. Then we're going to get more into the weeds on how we got here, how we arrived at the TANF Opportunity Act. And then I'm going to walk you all through some of the components of the act that specifically are about funding opportunities for communities across Tennessee to focus on growing the capacity of families and ultimately reducing their dependency on public supports. So first, when you look at this map, this is the map of the 80-plus federal programs that spend over $1 trillion every year. When you look at this, we like to call it the $1 trillion mess that we're trying to tease out and solve. But this is a lot. It's a lot to navigate as a practitioner, as a policymaker, and obviously as a job seeker. Our system itself, and we're going to talk about some of the flaws of this, is extremely difficult to navigate. When you look at that $80 trillion mess, you see a lack of a shared vision. You see something that is really program-centric and not person-centric. You see something that is transactional and not relational. At the Department of Human Services, we are really good at delivering benefits and services to vulnerable families and individuals. We measure our success based on the delivery of those services and those benefits. We're really good at delivering a SNAP benefit, but are we good at connecting you to a career pathway? And that's where that relational piece comes in. We're also really siloed compared to cohesive and coordinated. I mentioned that we measure outputs, not outcomes. We measure the number of benefits we have administered, the number of people served, the amount of funding we have spent, versus are we building the assets of individuals that we are serving? Are we connecting them to those high demand, high opportunity career pathways and placing them on that trajectory in the long term? Are we seeing increased earnings of the folks we're serving? And ultimately, we see something that's really government-centric. So what we are trying to do, and we are on a roadshow to tell everyone about it at the Department of Human Services, is redesign the safety net here in Tennessee and utilize the TANF Opportunity Act as a catalyst for doing just that. We want to have a shared vision across Tennessee that the safety net should be a mile marker in a life's journey, not a destination unto itself. And that shared vision is really around growing the capacity of families we serve to ultimately reduce dependency on the public services and benefits and goods we are delivering. So you all are probably familiar with the TANF program itself. The goal of temporary assistance for needy families is to reduce intergenerational dependency on public benefits by increasing self-sufficiency, education, and economic mobility of families with children. So there are 4 federal goals that we have to think about when we look at the TANF program. One is providing assistance to needy families with children so that they can live in their own homes or the homes of relatives. 2, ending dependence of needy parents on government benefits through work, job preparation, and marriage. 3, reducing out-of-wedlock pregnancies. And 4, encouraging the formation and maintenance of 2-parent families. I'm not going to spend too much time on our annual award itself with TANF, but this gives you a breakdown of what that looks like. So each year, the Department of Human Services receives $191 million in our TANF annual award. And based on our caseloads and different expenditures, we either have kind of 2 scenarios of impacts to our reserve. In some cases, that may be actually contributing to the reserve. And then in other cases, if we actually expend fully everything that we have budgeted, we might even dip into our reserve. But what the TANF Opportunity Act does is it ensures that we are not only spending down our TANF reserve itself and getting those funds out into the community so that we can learn what works when we talk about moving a family from crisis to stability to a career pathway. But the Opportunity Act also caps our rainy day fund in the TANF reserve at $191 million. That's the annual award amount for TANF. And then the Opportunity Act itself focuses on where those unobligated funds within the TANF reserve go. You all will probably remember hearing that reserve amount itself was around $710 million. But some of that is actually obligated through some of our existing contracts over the next several years. So the TANF Opportunity Act itself, what I'm going to be talking about, breaking this down over what's going to be happening over the next few months and years. We at the department are going to be securing several third-party vendors to support communities as they partner with us on implementing the Opportunity Act. We are going to be, we actually just launched our new TANF Advisory Board, the Families First Community Advisory Board. They met for the first time last week. And that is comprised of 21 members that are laid out in the legislation. It includes Commissioner McCord, Commissioner Carter chairs the advisory board. There are a handful of other commissioners on that board. And then there are also some nonprofit and business leader representatives on the board as well that were appointed by the speakers of the House and Senate. And then also DHS has a handful of appointees as well, representing the faith-based community. WIOA, we actually have the Tennessee Higher Education Commission on the board, and then current and former customers as well. That advisory board is going to be responsible for selecting the planning grants and pilots that I'm going to talk a little bit about in detail here in a second. Additionally, over the course of the next few years, they'll be measuring success and present a final report to the Tennessee General Assembly with recommendations for the TANF program moving forward based on what we learned through some of these investments over the next few years. And then lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the cross-sector engagement that we will be trying to facilitate over the next few months, and appreciate you all thinking how you can get involved in that. And then I'm not going to talk about this as much, but one piece of the legislation that's good for you all to be aware of is that we will have an annual community grant process. $50 million of the reserve will go towards the community grant process that will launch in the new year. And then each year, if we have any unspent funds from our annual award, that will roll back into the community grant process to ensure that the the TANF reserve itself does not exceed that 191 rainy day cap. So first, we're going to talk about, one real forward, there we go, planning grants. We are going to be launching next week the Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Program. And in preparation for selecting who will receive those pilot program implementation grants, which I'll talk more about, we are going to be launching a planning grant process, asking communities across the state to think about what would the cross-sector approach in your community look like to meet your community's specific needs on moving families from that point of crisis to career pathways. Who are the partners that need to be around the table? What is the vision for your community? And how would you go about building out a robust proposal around that pilot? So these will be high-level abstracts, 3 to 5 pages, with some basic information around that high-level vision and partners. That application period is going to open on September 1st and last for the month of September, so applications will close on September 30th. Each planning grant will be up to $500,000, and the board can select up to 50, though we are encouraging the board to think about less than that just to ensure we're promoting collaboration and alignment across communities. So these planning grants will be used for assisting community partners with technical assistance, visioning, program design, budgeting, partnership development, all in preparation for submitting that final full proposal for the Opportunity Pilot Program. And grantees will have 3 months in that planning grant period to do that. Planning grantees must be representing the whole state. So the board will probably be looking at that mix of the planning grantees that are selected to ensure that there is representation across the state, and also in a mix of rural, urban, and suburban populations. The types of entities per the legislation that are eligible to apply for the planning grants include political subdivisions of the state, nonprofits, development districts, and human resource agencies, or HRAs. This keeps going ahead. So DHS will be, we have actually already started to promote the planning grant period itself, and you can find more information about that on our website. It's consistent with what you're hearing today. We'll open that application period on September 1st. After applications close, DHS will conduct a mandatory review to check for eligibility and meeting some of the basic mandatory requirements for TANF, and then we will provide the planning grants and evaluation criteria to the advisory board for their review and selection. So they will be doing that throughout the fall. The advisory board will select those grantees, and then we will announce those later this fall. So you've heard me talk about these pilots, and I know that can mean a lot of different things. When we talk about the pilots for the Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Program, we are thinking big and collaborative and how to solve some of these really difficult issues that Commissioner McCord talked about earlier, the fronts that we have of the labor force participation rate front, the skills gap front, the alignment of our programs front. We are looking for 7 pilot programs that are going to be demonstrating the effectiveness of growing capacity of low-income families to ultimately reduce their dependency on public supports. We're going to be encouraging collaboration and collective impact across communities to ensure that, that different programs are actually aligning and we're leveraging our existing resources. And I know this sounds really broad, but the reason why it's broad is because we want these solutions to be locally driven. Each community needs something different. We know that a solution in Memphis is different than a solution in Upper East for a low-income family, or even for those workforce needs there, right? And so the opportunity pilots will include 6 pilots that will be selected by the advisory board, with 2 in each Grand Division, East, Middle, and West, and then 1 pilot that will be operated by DHS. Those pilots must be selected by the advisory board by May 1st, and they'll move into implementation in fall of 2022. Each pilot will receive $25 million over the course of 3 years. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else to include on pilots. To the left here, you will see what we're going to be focusing on in the DHS pilot. This is benefits cliffs. I know we've been talking about this several times today. It's something we're really passionate about at the Department of Human Services, is how do we ensure that if a family has a full makeup of different benefits across different departments and federal programs, as they enter into a career pathway and they start to increase their earnings or their educational attainment and they lose access to those benefits, how do we make sure we slope that cliff so they stay on this path and that we haven't induced a financial shock that's like chutes and ladders and put them back at the beginning? Similarly, we want to make sure that we are supporting families in that time when the cliff would be, and that's where, at least with our DHS pilot, we're excited to be really innovative about how to deliver the right mix of wraparound services and cash assistance to families at those timely points of intervention. And if you're not familiar with benefits cliffs, just a quick crash course. That cliff is mapped out as what is your take-home pay and your benefits minus your expenses. So your income and your benefits minus your taxes and expenses. With all of the Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Program grantees, we will be conducting rigorous program evaluation. The legislative intent of the Opportunity Act was to really learn what works and have a rigorous program evaluation partner that we will select to walk alongside our grantees and ultimately prepare a final report to the advisory board and the Tennessee General Assembly. So we will have an RFP process to select that research partner that will launch later this fall and are excited about that. One other point of clarification you may be thinking with the planning grants and the pilots, you must apply for a planning grant in order to be selected for a pilot. Earlier I mentioned that we are trying to bring together a lot of different sectors and think about cross-sector solutions to this. So over the next few months, Commissioner Carter and the department are going to be going around the state and hosting sector-based conversations to preach this gospel of how we transform the safety net and use the TANF Opportunity Act as a catalyst for doing just that. So we're going to be engaging faith-based organizations, the business community, philanthropy, other state agencies, our academic partners, our community action agencies and HRAs that are funded by the Community Services Block Grant. We actually convened them earlier this week. And then other non-governmental and service organizations. And so I encourage you all, if you have groups of folks who you want to know about this work, to know about the funding opportunities, the vision, and so that we can also identify opportunities for partnership, please do let me know, because we would love to try and get them on the calendar for some of these sector-based conversations. But ultimately what we're trying to do is bring together all of those sectors in partnership with some of the grantees that will receive funds through the Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Program, so that we bring those puzzle pieces together and have this whole of Tennessee approach. So just highlighting some of the next steps and key dates. The planning grant application period will be from September 1st to September 30th. The planning grant application review period will take place for about a month after that. And then the planning grants themselves will go into effect throughout the winter for 90 days. And then at the end of that 90-day period, planning grantees will submit their final full pilot proposals to the advisory board for their review. The pilots will be selected in the spring of 2022 by that May 1st date, and then go into implementation in fall of 2022 for 3 years. And then alongside that, we'll also have the research partner. If you are interested in staying up to date about the TANF Opportunity Act and all parts of its implementation, you can learn more information on our website. The link is right here. There's also a place where you can actually sign up to join a distribution list to make sure that you are up to date when we are announcing those funding opportunities when the application is available online next week. And then also, we actually just added some information about that new TANF advisory board online as well. So you can see some of the minutes from their meeting, who is on that board, and when their upcoming meetings are taking place. And all of those are public. I think that's it. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ann. What questions do you have about the presentation or the program in general? Yes.
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate you coming because not everybody chose your session. And I was going, can I get that real crazy slide with all the stuff? I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we presented last week at the Workforce Conference, and so we are excited to present anywhere and often about all of this, so yeah.
Chairman Barry?
Yes.
If I may have a moment to just address the board, and thank you. It was a really informative presentation. I just want to remind the board members and then also our newer board members for a point of context. This board elected to make TANF a partner back when the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act was signed. We were one of the few states in the country that did that. So this board made it a point to be inclusive of TANF, understanding how important it was to help DHS in their mission to engage these families into getting meaningful, sustainable employment. And so you may ask the question, how does this intersect with the work of the board? It directly intersects. And so with Ann coming today, this board has a seat at the table to ensure that all of the investments, Tennessee is not short on resources, as you can tell, to make sure all of the investments that's coming in that touches workforce, that this board has an opportunity to evaluate that, to make sure that the outcomes are in line with the priorities that were committed to the governor. And so I just wanted to add some context, Ann, to that. So the board understands that it's more than just an FYI, but you get an opportunity to look to see, is this moving Tennesseans along, and how do we be good stewards of all of the federal and state investments in workforce? So if there's questions or things you would like to see to help shape this, I'm sure Ann and others would be happy to hear from that. But these are hopefully frequent updates that you'll get as a board to keep us all accountable to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction. Thank you, Chairman Berry.
Very good. Yeah, Ann, I like what you said about currently measuring output rather than outcomes. And Deputy, what you're saying to me, that's the point of intersection, right? It's how can we as a workforce board make sure those outcomes are meaningful coming off of the assistance given on the output.
Absolutely. And that's where that long-term success of who we are serving comes in is, and I think it'd be really helpful to hear any ideas that you all have around those outcomes, especially as we are working on framing these funding opportunities. So,
Yep. What other comments or questions do you have?
Mr. Chairman, so, and if a county applies, what agency would be implementing? We have DHS in our community, but what would implementation look like?
sure. And so I think I mentioned we're trying to encourage collaboration and collective impact in these funding opportunities. And so that basically means that communities may have a lead applicant who applies. That could be it could be a political subdivision of the state. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a development district or an HRA. So our hope is that we have one lead applicant who is then subcontracting with and partnering with other community partners. So that whole planning grant process is intended to identify kind of, well, who are the partners around the table? What's the governance structure look like? How are they going to work together? And also, what do they want to accomplish?
Okay, so do you currently have an RFP for a contractor who can help communities build those plans for $500,000 grants?
So the $500,000 grants are intended to help provide the technical assistance. So for example, a community could go out and hire a consultant to then help them with developing their proposal for the pilots.
Okay.
And then once the pilots are selected, we will have technical assistance that the department is providing.
Pretty quick window for organizations that may or may not have dedicated grant writers there.
I think that's why we're trying to keep the planning grants themselves really high level. So it's a high level, what is your vision? Who are your partners? 3 to 5 page abstract. And the form itself will be very simple.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for this presentation. One of the things that I really appreciated is when you talked about the flaws of the public safety net and going from program to person and transactional, relational. I think those are all very, very important. I guess my question would be, what are we doing to ensure that we don't fall back into the transactional program-centric, siloed programs of the past with these new, we're putting more money into it and so forth? How are we going to ensure that we're going to make sure that these programs are going to be person-centric, relational, cohesive and coordinated, and focusing on outcomes? What are we going to do to measure and make sure that those new programs happen in this format?
Yeah, so I think we're going to be embedding a lot of those values of addressing the flaws of the safety net into the board's evaluation criteria for the pilots and the planning grants. So, That's where that will happen. And then also, then again, I mean, you know, how we measure those outcomes. What we're hoping is that, you know, when we think about growing capacity to reduce dependency, growing capacity really is those program level outcomes, you know, related to housing stability or job placement or financial empowerment, and you know, are you increasing your savings and reducing your bad debt? Reducing dependency is the long term, right? And that's where our research partner is going to come in. They'll be looking at the deep dive program evaluation across all of the pilots. They'll also be looking at cost benefit analysis. They'll be doing some randomized control trials. And so it's exciting to see how we'll have those outcomes that really reflect those values of addressing the flaws of the safety net embedded throughout this entire process, whether it's on the front end with the evaluation criteria for the funding opportunities, in the middle of the program implementation itself as grantees are submitting their outcomes reports to the department, or down the line long-term with some of the research that our research partner will be doing. So.
The key word was when you said housing. In the rural area, it appears that transition of housing and transportation is a major need, which is major resources leading to employment. So will the proposals be open if a community wanted to write a proposal for the maybe housing, transitional housing versus housing?
As long as it can,
And transportation combined.
if that is the unique needs of that community and it can tie back to those 4 purposes of TANF and is serving a low-income family, yes.
Thank you.
Good comments and discussion. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I do have a question on maybe just to gather a better understanding. So I'm assuming that there were some outreach to these 4 institutions that can actually write grants. Have you seen any engagement? What are the Q&A, you know, the top questions that they're having? I'm just curious.
Yes, we actually blasted out to all of our DHS community partners and to the community service block grant agencies, the HRAs, the development districts. We blasted that out yesterday with a 1-pager that summarizes everything I just said. The main thing we've heard is, where's the application? How do I go on and get started? And so if you all hear that question as you're talking to your communities, please make sure that everybody knows that application itself will be online September 1st. We have had a lot of engagement with following the advisory board. We've got a lot of email traffic with everybody wanting the details of the application itself, which again will be available September 1st. And then we did have some good participation with the advisory board meeting, that first advisory board meeting last week. I think we ended up having a total of around 200 viewers online. So, yeah. Those meetings moving forward are a great way to stay involved with the activities of all of this, and they are open to the public. You can come in person or stream online.
So Ann has asked for our input and ideas, and so if you have some recommendations or some insights that you want to share, you can feel free to send those to me and copy Eiler, and we will get those to your team on our behalf.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Ann. Okay, and next we have a fiscal update from Assistant Administrator Ivan Greenfield. Or not. Hi. Well, I'm fine with that.
We're not getting Ivan today.
That's
We're getting
fine.
Chandra Bliss.
Excellent.
Ivan is out of town, and I was drafted to present.
Happy to have you here. Thank you.
I'm happy to be here this morning. Hopefully, it'll give you all some time back on your meeting here. Your packet has the fiscal plan here. We're going to go through the fiscal overview, overall funding and expenditures, talk a little bit about participants served, enrolled. We're going to go through key performance indicators, our KPIs. We'll talk about some challenges and opportunities, and if you have any questions, I will attempt to answer them, and I have my wonderful colleagues here with me who will help if I'm unable to do so. Next slide. Okay, first slide. Thank you. So when we look here at our overall funding, and what we're showing here is a combined effort of workforce services, adult education, and voc rehab. And so you can see where we were for fiscal year 2020 and where we are for 2021. Again, I should note that all of these numbers are running through June of this year. Now, when you look at workforce services, you see there an increase from 88 million to the 108 million. Of course, that's our CARES and our NDG funding that we received. You will see increases in both adult ed and voc rehab. I will note that with voc rehab, they do have carryover funding that they are allowed to do from year to year. So that's why you see that jump there. So we're looking at a total funding of $218 million. When we look at expenditures, we've got 149 million, leaving us thus around 68 million to go. Next slide. Okay, so let's first here look at workforce services. It shows you how our 108 million of that funding, how that breaks out. You have it in WIOA, employment services, other programs, and then we have our discretionary, which is our apprenticeship, and our other. The expenditures are running right now at about $92 million. And again, we've had the significant increases due to the COVID and the CARES. You can also look at your attachments to get additional information on this further breakdown. Next slide. Okay. When we look at our participants served, and again, we're looking at Title I only, and you're looking at this quarter to quarter here. So what our slide is showing here is that we had roughly 13,073 total WIOA participants that were served during Q4, and overall total of 53,112. The participant cost is running at about 14.2, and again, if we would look at attachment 3, you would see a further breakdown of information. Next slide. Okay. This is the allocation and expenditures of adult education. And you will see that their funding has increased about $1 million over last year. And their expenditures are running around the same. So you have expenditures right now at $11,027,000, leaving about 1.8 remainder. And the good thing with them is that you look at, they have 85.8% expended. So that's good. That's what we want to see. Their total enrollments right now is sitting at 7,814. This is the breakout for voc rehab. Again, voc rehab has the carryover from year to year, so they're sitting at 97 million. They've expended 46 million. Their percent expended is at 47.3, so almost at half of their money. And their total enrollments are running right now at 11,803. Next slide. Okay. We've had a lot of conversation about KPIs. This is a snapshot for Q4 for WIOA Title I and Title III. As you can see, and you all, when we see green, green means good. Red means, doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It means it's a concern, and we want it to improve, and we are reviewing that and seeing whether the technical assistance or whatever we can do to increase the number. You'll see the negotiated and the actual, and then the percent of the goal. And so dislocated worker is a little down. Youth under credential attainment is a little down. Wagner-Pfizer for the employment rate second one is a little down. So these are, they are technically falling below the negotiated targets, but again, we are reviewing that and providing technical assistance where necessary to improve that. And again, you can look at attachment 4 and 5 for additional information.
Chandra, if I may, if we can go back to that slide. So one point of note here is even on those three that Chandra highlighted, with our negotiations with U.S. Department of Labor, we have a 90% safe harbor. So when we get to 90% of the goal, we have met the goal. So even though we are under on those three for our actual negotiated performance, the percentage of the goal for all three of those, we are above 90%. So in the eyes of the U.S. Department of Labor, we have met all of our key performance indicators for Title I and Title III.
Yes. Okay, for our key performance, our KPIs, and I will just say Ben Pacino is the one who compiles this and does a phenomenal job with the KPIs. I just want to say that. There are 12 from July 1st through June 30th of 2022. Each KPI is reviewed on a quarterly basis, and it's going to be ranked from a 0 to 5. Again, in your attachments, you'll see the breakout there. Apprenticeship, integrated English, civics education, senior employment, and TAA are newly identified in 2021, and those KPI achievement rankings are reflected as a baseline. Next slide. So this is what we were talking about, the 1 through 5. And you can see we have some issues here a little bit with the reemployment as far as the co-enrollment and the TAA. Those are things that we are working on. On the flip side of that, when you look at what's 5, you look at adult dislocated worker, national dislocated worker. As far as new enrollments, the target was 1,042. We're actually at 1,385. So we are surpassing the goal. So this is what we want to see. We don't want to see too many 1s or 2s. We want to see mostly 3s, 4s, and 5s. And that's what we see here. Next slide. So what are the challenges that we have? The challenges, pretty apparent, low enrollments and participation. There is a potential of funding reversion. You know, if we don't utilize funds, they have to go back. But we do have quite a few opportunities. We do have joint fiscal and performance reporting that we're working on that will help measure effectiveness and impact. Again, we are increasing partner engagement and collaboration, and we have systems integration. So those are the really strong positive things that we are working on. And I think that is it. Do I have any questions?
Good information. What questions does the board have?
Okay.
Well, that
Chairman?
Yes. Oh, you almost got away. I got a question.
What resources do you need to reach those opportunities? I mean, do we have the resources we need?
The question is, what resources do we need to?
Right, when we say system integration, increased partner engagement, collaboration.
Yeah, yes, we do have it. We are continuing to work on that. We are, like on our side of the house, we are getting ready to institute a new grants management system. We have the Dulles system, the Grants for TN, that is going to go away at the end of the year. We're going to a new system called Smart Simple. You know, we still have Edison that we're using. We still have Geosol, you know, which is the performance data that we're using. So it's important that we get all of these systems to talk to each other. And they really were not necessarily designed for that. So, you know, there's code and things that we have to write to get it to do that. There's reports that we need on the county level. There's some things that we need. But yes, we are moving toward that direction. So we will have better system integration, and also integration with AE systems and VR systems. VR has a whole new, I mean, so we're all on different systems. So to kind of compile all that it's taking some time and some work, but we are confident we can get there.
It's kind of like our KPI discussion. I mean.
Yes, sir.
If we've got to have those systems talking.
Yeah.
Got to make sure we got the resources.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay.
Well, Ivan could not have chosen a better proxy, so thank you.
I gave you all some contact.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Assistant Commissioner Plale, you have acknowledgement you want to recognize?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Berry. Steve Plale, Assistant Commissioner for the Division of Workforce Services. I hate to miss an opportunity to acknowledge one of our own, so I appreciate just the moment to do that, Chairman Berry, and for this board as well. One of our regional directors. Our regional directors are our field staff, or part of our field staff that support our 9 local regions across the state of Tennessee. They do a tremendous job and are really our connection point, our liaison for what we're doing here in Nashville and how that translates out into our local areas, supporting our local boards. They sit on our local boards. They support our board staff and are really a connection point and a primary connection point for all of the services that we provide through the Department of Labor in our regions. Virginia Housley, who has been with the department for almost 3 decades, 27 years, having started with the Families First program years ago and supporting SNAP, ENT. Virginia, stand up. Virginia is here. I know she didn't want to, but I have known Virginia now for several years, having known her prior to my coming to the Department of Labor. Virginia is retiring, actually effective the middle of October, but her last, I guess that's the official date, but her last date working with us will be at some point in September, based on all the leave and everything that we have. She has accumulated. So I wanted to take just a moment in public to thank her for her years of service and to acknowledge her retirement. We wish you nothing but the best. Virginia is definitely part of this family and will continue to be so. We appreciate you so very much, Virginia. Thank you. Chairman Berry.
Very nice, thank you. If you happen to have made a motion or a second on any of the policy or votes that we had earlier today, if you would see Eiler after the meeting, just to make sure she gets the minutes correct. So if you were one of those who spoke up and helped pass those policies, that would be helpful to her. I just want to reemphasize the appreciation that Governor Lee gave to this board and the importance of what you do to serve the residents of our great state. So it's great to see the trends of employment getting back to where they need to be, and it is not without the great effort of this board and all the agencies that are part of this effort. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time today. And I think we might have set a new record for speed of a board meeting. So enjoy that time, and we'll consider this one closed. Thank you.